I so dumb?
No.
It's a fair question. Let me say, I didn't change my mind in 2012. I changed my mind. I actually took on these corporations more than a decade ago. And here's what happened, and here's how I thought about it, and I wish I were smarter, as a matter of fact. Look, when I was growing up, I had this opinion that basically this country worked. That the way our political system worked was we had two parties who would scream and yell at each other, and then they'd meet in the middle and solve the problems, and we'd move on as a country. And, you know, I have lots of relatives who are Republicans, I have lots of relatives who are Democrats, and you'll never hear me say a bad word about Republican voters. I thought basically that's how it worked. And we had slightly different opinions, but everybody basically put the country first. And so we could scream and yell, but know that in the end, we're going to meet in the middle and do the right thing. I actually thought that. I discovered as I was working, the thing that really turned me around was climate. Like I worked for John Kerry, because I thought that George W. Bush was a disastrous president for America. I thought he was going to be, I watched him in his first year, I thought, oh my gosh, this guy's a disaster. I worked for John Kerry. I thought Kerry for sure would get elected, and he didn't. And so my wife and I started a bank, a community bank, to basically send money to the parts of society that don't get money. We did economic justice, environmental sustainability, and supporting businesses owned by women and people of color. So I'm going along thinking the system basically works, and I started worrying about climate. And I started worrying about climate maybe 12 to 14 years ago. And I thought, okay, why is the system not working on this huge problem that even somebody like me has figured out is a huge problem? And I thought maybe I should have been smarter sooner. But I just assumed the American government, when something goes terribly wrong, it deals with it. And I watched, and just so you know, my original reaction was to do a series of nonpartisan or bipartisan studies to prove that we can deal with climate and be richer, better paid, create jobs, have lower cost energy, be healthier and more just. Because I thought, in America, literally, if I can just prove this with Republicans and a lot of CEOs, that people will go, oh, I hadn't realized that, now we're going to do the right thing because we're Americans, we do the right thing. What happened was, it turned out, there was no Republican elected official who listened to us. We had a bunch of senior Republicans who I brought along. We had a bunch of CEOs running some of the biggest companies in America who were signed on, who would go and talk. No Republican elected cared a hoot. It didn't change one thing. And that's when I started to realize, okay, this system isn't working. And that's when I started coming, oh my gosh, why would America, the greatest democracy in the world, not be working? And the answer was money. The corporations that bought the government. So then I started thinking, okay, I can't be involved in these businesses because I just assume you're a legal business doing essential work in the American economy. We're a fossil fuel-based economy. We still are. That the government would put in rules that would make it fair so you didn't have to worry about what's fair because that's their job. And you're like, no, it's not true. They're not going to. Because the oil and gas companies won't let them. And they own the actual decision making. And that's when I thought, okay, now I'm going to have to do something about it beyond just bring out the facts or invest in technology, which I also thought was giving money for research so we could get to clean energy faster. But I also thought might be a problem. Being from California, I thought, oh, it'll be a tech solution. No. Turns out, and I decided this, not in 2012, that's when I managed to get out. But before, probably 12 years ago, I decided, this is a political problem. Oh my gosh, this system isn't working. It's been corrupted, and the only solution is more democracy and getting the people to take it back. And that's when I thought, okay, I got to divest from all this stuff. I got to take the giving pledge. I got to start organizing people. There's something really wrong here. And you know what? I'm an American. So it's not a spectator sport. I'm going to start showing up and running these propositions. I'm going to organize it at the grassroots. The American people are going to take it back. And that's exactly, I wish I'd done it earlier, but I basically, I have given it everything I have, and I'm giving it everything I have.
request and a question. The request, and it's both around the concept of communication with the American people. Number one, would you please not use Twitter for a year?
So I actually think that's a great question, Kathy. Thank you. Look, the funny thing about this experience for me, I mean, I've done this full time, traveled around and talked to Americans and done town halls and, registered kids on campus and talked to activists full time for 7 years. I've only been doing it 7 months as a candidate for president. But I think everybody asks me, is it grueling? And they also ask, and I think there's an assumption that doing this makes you manipulative and superficial and dishonest. That's politics. Superficial, manipulative, and dishonest. And let me say this. I've had the exact opposite experience. For me, this experience has been a journey into becoming as idealistic and corny as possible. No kidding. Because that's actually what I think is the right way to be, and it's the only effective way to be as far as I'm concerned. Every deceptive, cynical, negative political thing I think is really bad for the United States of America. That actually what I believe in is the most old-fashioned virtues of what our country stands for. No joke. And I think it's time that we not be embarrassed to talk about standing up for what's right, not be embarrassed about, look, impeachment is really about having standards and fighting for your standards of decency, and not being dragged down into these very negative, you're talking about Twitter, snarky, negative, manipulative ways of thinking. And I've tried to do this in this campaign, is to say, look, this campaign is super, super, super important. But one of the things that's most important in this campaign is taking back the ideals of America. That this country was not built on GDP per capita. It was built on freedom and justice and equality and doing what's right. And if you think about why people get up in the morning, we want a purpose in life. And to me, the biggest statistic in America is 3 years in a row of lower life expectancy. And the three of the four big reasons are alcohol abuse, drug abuse, and suicide. 3 out of 4 deaths of despair. So when I think about this country, Kathy, my whole point is I want to have a reason to be alive, to do a positive thing while I'm here on this planet. And I think everybody else in the United States has that feeling too. And if we don't have that feeling, then we're going to drink ourselves to death and drug ourselves to death or just kill ourselves. So, and that's how I feel about climate. It's like, okay, we have this sincere, gigantic challenge, maybe the biggest challenge in human history. And only the American people can solve it, just so you know. There's no other country that can solve this around the globe. Great. That means we have to do something that we can do that is incredibly moral and important, and we have a huge reason to be on the planet. And so, my attitude on this whole thing is, I think we should be talking in idealistic terms. That is what this race is about. Are we going to get dragged down into what I think of as political violence against Americans and cruelty to our fellow citizens, or are we going to actually go back to rising together, rise through faith? As a simple rule of thumb, if Mr. Trump is for it in foreign policy, I'm against it. He is someone who believes we don't have allies, we don't have values, we don't have coalitions, we don't have strategy, we don't have process. We basically do bilateral confrontation and escalation where we tell people you can't trust us. It's America first. We don't care about you. You're going to take care of yourselves, we take care of ourselves, and it's just a straight up confrontation / competition. Okay, that is the dumbest way of thinking I can think of. This is an incompetent president. If you want to know, Joe, how I think about it, I would say, as an example, the way President Obama dealt with Iran. A coalition of us and our allies going and dealing with a regime which we do not like, that's antithetical to us in many value senses, but going in and getting them to give up their nuclear ambitions in return for a softening of economic sanctions that makes the Middle East safer, makes American citizens safer, stands for our values, do something good. As opposed to withdrawing from it, starting to escalate in terms of words and actions, making Americans less safe and the world less safe. So when I think about what we do, look, we do best when we're with our traditional allies, standing up for our values together, making us safer. The job of the Commander-in-Chief, first and foremost, is safety of the American citizens, but emphasizing values, diplomacy, and allies. No, what I said was, we had economic sanctions against Iran, and we made a deal with them that we would loosen economic sanctions in return for them giving up their ambitions to build nuclear weapons that they could blow up the world with. And to me, that was a fair trade, because they still have a desperate economic situation. We are absolutely opposed to that regime, but we need them to stand down in terms of nuclear ambitions, to make the Middle East safer, to make our allies safer, and to make American citizens safer. And so de-escalating violence. Look, let me say something else. We spend over $700 billion a year on defense. That number has gone up by $100 billion under Mr. Trump. Just to get back to Thomas's question, we spend $70 billion a year as a federal government on education. We have spent trillions of dollars on 2 failed wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. That is money, that's not money that just came from nowhere and went to nowhere. That's money that did not go to Social Security, did not go to investing in our kids, did not go into our healthcare system, went to 2 wars that are failures, that killed people, that American citizens died in, that lots of other people died in, and as far as I can tell, did not make us one bit safer, and made us less safe. I'll answer your question simply. That's one of the worst ideas I've ever heard in my whole life. The idea of giving more guns in the schools is insane. Look, let's talk about the Second Amendment for a second. The Second Amendment gives people the right to have to own and bear arms. But like every other right in America, it's not a unilateral right. And think about the right to freedom of speech. We have freedom of speech in the United States of America, but you're not allowed to scream fire in a crowded theater. So do people have a right to possess firearms? Sure they do. And just so you guys know, my family raises grass-finished cattle, chickens, and pigs about an hour south of where we live in San Francisco. So we have a farm. And on that farm, we host gun safety lessons so that people in the neighborhood for free can come and take a day-long course and then take a test and get a certificate saying they're gun safe. So if you want to be a proficient, safe gun owner, you can come to our ranch and we'll give you a free course and get a free certificate so you can get a gun license. But, so I'm not someone who doesn't recognize the Second Amendment, but you know what? First graders have a right to live. That's also a right in American society. And beyond that, they have a right not to be scared to death by having to do active shooter drills. And you're in first grade, you don't know that this is very unlikely. You think it's probably pretty likely. They're making you hide under the desk. Okay? And grandmothers have a right not to spend their life worried every time they hear a siren go by that some nut has taken an assault rifle down to the local primary school to live out his insane fantasy. So, I mean, if you look at our website, we have a robust gun violence prevention program starting with background checks on every gun purchase that everybody in the United States wants, but the gun manufacturers won't allow to have happen through the Congress of the United States. It's a perfect example of corporations owning the government. Everybody wants background checks on gun purchases. Republicans want it more than Democrats. And we don't have it because of the gun manufacturers' control of this Congress. But we know, because states have different rules, that fewer guns in society means fewer gun deaths. And that means fewer mass shootings, less spousal violence with guns, street people aren't scared to walk down, and by the way, 60% of gun-related deaths are suicides. Reducing the number of guns in society reduces the amount of gun violence and gun-related deaths. And it's something that we are off the charts on compared to other societies. You know, we had over 400 mass shootings last year in the United States. The number 2 country was Mexico, 5. You know, Norway had 1 10 years ago. We should be accepting the idea that yes, the Second Amendment exists, we can respect the Second Amendment and also respect the right of little kids to go to school without getting gunned down.
One more question before photos. Hi Tom.
Hey.
Jared Weiss. I'm here with my 8-year-old daughter. We're from Johnston, Iowa. And
What's her name?
Natalie.
Nice to meet you.
her name's Natalie. We're here primarily because of her. Number one, a year ago, she saw one of your commercials and said, I like Tom. I like he's going to do good for America.
We need 8-year-olds to be able to vote. There's a wisdom here that is undeniable as far as I'm concerned. It's not the NRA members that are the issue. It's really the money that comes from the gun manufacturers. And it seems like from Russia. But let me say this. I'm a grassroots person. And so, you know, we Next Gen goes out to all these campuses. I said 41 in Iowa, but 420 across the country to get young people involved. And we do a lot of work specifically with young people. We also go door to door at Next Gen with our partners in the labor movement. We've hit 25 million doors in the last 2 election cycles. My answer in terms of every political question is this. My trust is in the American people, not in the people in Washington, D.C. My experience in terms of climate was bringing objective facts didn't matter. We won that argument in terms of climate years ago. We haven't won the fight still. And so when I look, and that's my answer on impeachment, is to get Americans to raise their voices, because the facts are not what's running these dialogues. So in answer to your question, what I know needs to happen in 2020 and needs to change is we need Americans to basically buy back into democracy and participate. That if that happens, all of this goes away. That in fact, we will elect different people, we will get the change we want. The people who don't participate in this election, I mean, there are 2 ways the Democrats think about winning. One is we get the 2% of moderate Republicans and independents who can't make up their mind and tell them, we're Republicans, but a little nicer. It's like, no, we're not. That's not true. We're completely different. I was saying, I want to turn the whole page on this thing. I want a transformation away from political violence and cruelty to Americans. So what we really need to do, and to answer your question, is go to the 50% of Americans who don't vote and say to them, they don't vote because they think the system is crooked, that corporations own it, that no one tells the truth, that no one cares about them, so why would they vote? And say, if you vote, everything changes. If we get back democracy for the people, everything changes. Your life is infinitely better. You have a purpose in this country. We do the right thing. And we sweep these people out. They have basically framed this in a series of things that I think are disastrously untrue. That if we cut taxes on rich people, tax revenues will go up. Not true. We have 40 years to prove it's not true. If rich people do better, it will trickle down to society. Nope. 40 years, it's not true. Unions are bad for working people. Nope, that's not true. It's a series of stories they've told that Americans are lazy and want to live off the government. You know, the whole Ronald Reagan welfare queen story. That was a myth. That was a lie. That's a cruel lie and a racist lie at heart. This idea that the Mexican people coming up from Mexico are rapists and murderers. That's a lie. In back of every fair policy is a cruel lie about people to justify cruelty to them in return. And so what do we have to do? Look, exactly what I'm trying to do right now, and what you guys are doing and what you're going to do next Monday, which is to stand up for the truth and what's right. That's what we need to do, and then we need to show up together and really turn the page on what I think of as a disastrous and cruel 40 years to the American people and get back to our actual ideals, Kathy. That this is who we are, that we actually are the home of the brave, the land of the free. That's us. If we do that, we will be in good shape. We will take care of Natalie. We will do the right thing. And it's that corny. It's not sophisticated. It's not manipulative or deceptive. That's who we are, and we have to stand up for that and make it stick.
That's it. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you like this political content, please consider subscribing. Thanks for watching.